getting the truth is not an easy thing to do. You will often get part truths. You'll often get truths from a perspective of the party spin on something. But there is data available for the American people to get to the real facts on things. And today, and I mean, this event here is being live streamed, and there's so much information available. But part of what all of us on this stage have committed to is providing the American people with the truth, not the party spin. Let's get the American people to get the real facts of the circumstances going on in this country so that we together, you and us, can begin to actually solve the problems on the basis of data that is accurate and not only just accurate but understandable so that we can actually fix things. And so it's possible to do. But you're correct.
Anybody else here want to jump in? Congressman Cicilline?
Yeah, I was just going to say that's one of the sort of principles of no labels is the idea, particularly in the financial area, to begin with a common set of facts. We all have differences of opinion about how we should navigate through these challenging financial times, and we should have those disagreements and argue about them passionately. But if we don't begin with a common understanding of what the challenges are in the short term and the long term, and if there's not a mechanism to report that regularly to the Congress of the United States, I think it just compounds the problem. You're absolutely right.
Anybody else on the panel?
Real
Yes,
quick,
sir,
one of the agenda items no labels is considering is nonpartisan staff. Rather than having a Democratic staff and a Republican staff give you your information that you're supposed to regurgitate at these hearings, you could have nonpartisan staff, everyone have a common set of information, and then, frankly, ask the appropriate questions to you as citizens and, frankly, our colleagues. But that would be a solution.
Sure. I've spoken to some of my colleagues, and the truth is, many of them, I think, do want to become part of this. And truthfully, it's not as hard for me, for a guy in a marginal district that's, pretty competitive, to be part of this. I always have to work to find consensus and persuade people. I think the bigger challenge is to get some of our colleagues involved with this group who represent very safe districts, where it may be harder for them to diverge from a party orthodoxy, for example. I think that's going to be the challenge, to get some of those folks, because we're not asking anybody to check their ideology at the door or their party label at the door, but we are asking people to be pragmatic and be practical, to try to find solutions. And we've got a divided government now. That's what the voters wanted, but that's meant for us, though. We still have to find solutions. And so the key is to talk to your members of Congress, who I think are from the really safe seats. They're the ones who are going to really need to engage in this kind of dialogue.
Congressman Hahn, you want to talk about this a little bit?
I was keeping this a secret. Oops. I guess it's... No, I came to Congress to find ways to reach across the aisle and make friends. I'm a part of a bipartisan prayer breakfast, really just so I could be together in a room once a week with members across the aisle. I'm debating playing softball, getting up at 7 in the morning for practice, just so I can find ways to make friends and make relationships. Because my whole life, and I don't know if it's more because I'm a woman, is that I think everything is about relationships, about making friends. That's how you get things done. And I think this gives an opportunity to find a way to be in the same room and get to know a little bit about each other. And I think there is a hunger, not just on the part of the American people. I think there's a hunger with members of Congress to find ways to do something that they can go back to their districts and say, yes, I am working together. Yes, I am reaching across the aisle. That's what gets, for me, the biggest applause when I go home. When I mention one thing that I'm doing in a bipartisan fashion, that's what makes people's faces light up, because that's what they're looking for in their leaders in Congress.
Congressman Hines, what kind of conversations have you had?
Don't make the mistake of, if your member of Congress or senator says, for whatever reason, I don't want to do that. It's not that they're bad people. Of the 535 of us, there just aren't a lot of folks who don't have the interests of their constituents and the interests of their country that wouldn't say a lot of what you've heard of from us up here today. The challenge is, we are, if we are nothing else, we are pretty finely tuned instruments understanding the incentives that are out there. And unfortunately today, there's a lot of people who worry about being primaried from the extreme of their party. And in the last 3 years, we've seen a lot of that. We saw it with Dick Lugar on one side, we saw it with Blanche Lincoln on the other side. And if you are worried about being primaried from your party's extreme, it is hard for you to reach across the aisle, because the very act of reaching across the aisle will be a 30-second ad in the primary election. So let's go beyond just saying, how can I convince this guy who's just not, or this woman who's not being constructive, and say, how can we set up a system where those people who do reach across the aisle, who are willing to compromise, who stand by their principles, but that want to get things done, that they're somehow protected, that they're protected from that primary challenge.
And Congressman,
That's 100%. The reality is that this is a venue and this is a forum to give those members that ordinarily would not want to put themselves out there so far and take on the risk of multiple primaries. This is the cover that they need. But there's something else each and every one of you can do. If you notice, why is the primary process so difficult, especially in those safe seats where it's guaranteed to be a Democrat that wins, guaranteed to be a Republican? It's because very few people get involved in the primary process. It's only those that they say are very involved in party politics that even vote in your primary. So not only do you need to encourage your individual member of Congress to join this group, you also need to get out there and vote in your primaries so that you don't have the extremes always winning, and that's also part of the solution. This is a great way to start, but we need you to get more involved as well.
all right.
There's no question that most members of Congress will listen to their constituents. The problem is we're not hearing from the vast majority that just wants to get things done. Now, I hear it in people. I was in a parade back in December, Christmas parade, holiday parade. I'm walking down, handing out candy to kids, and I hear someone yell, fix the fiscal cliff, compromise. Now, here I am in the middle of a parade, handing out candy, and someone just feels it in their heart. They have to yell out to me, compromise. They are yearning for it. People want it to happen. But we need to hear that from more people. I hear it from a lot of my constituents. I'm not sure everyone hears it. And we also have to hear it from as many people as possible. So it's just not the people who are on the fringes who are contacting us. We do keep count. We do look at the letters. We do keep count of how many people write in. And if we have 25, 50, 75, 100 people start writing in, calling in, emailing in, join No Labels, that will be heard, that will be noticed. So it does make a difference.
I can tell you a couple of things. One of the things that doesn't get my attention is threats or yelling and screaming. We've got enough yelling and screaming in this country. And you as citizens don't want us to yell and scream at each other. No more do we want you to yell and scream at us. It's not how you motivate things. But what I respond to is when citizens, thoughtful Americans, whether they're coming from a polar opposite position of mine, are able to come and talk to me or send me a letter that is thoughtful and thought-provoking, that is going to get my attention. If someone just starts out with 6 expletives and goes down from there, it's less likely for me to pay much attention to it. And we as a community of citizens, we have to begin to talk to each other in the way that we would want to be spoken to. And this idea that everything has to be a fight, and we have to scream at each other to be heard, it's counterproductive to the democratic process. It doesn't work with me. I don't think it works with many members of Congress. And so the best thing you can do, even if you have a member who is from an opposite political ideology than your own, is to go to them and say, how can I help you advance these ideas? What can I do to participate in this process? And you're likely to get a fairly good listen to. I really believe that.
I'm going to
Well, clearly the path that we're on is unacceptable. One of the pleasures and joys of public service I've found the last couple of years is all those things I used to say at the TV, I can now say on the House floor. We really do have to chart a different path for our children and our grandchildren. And I want to just really support what Reed was saying about the way to influence a member. I really find inspiration from President Lincoln, our first Republican president. He put it this way. He said, when the conduct of men is designed to be influenced, persuasion, these are his words, kind, unassuming persuasion should ever be adopted. And I'm convinced that this really is the path to go, that civility is not weakness. And what No Labels is really committed to doing is elevating the facts of a matter. And when we elevate the facts of a matter, I really think that that's the key to finding common ground. I've said it's like two circles, hard R's. You got Democrats and Republicans, but if you start to move these two circles, they start to overlap. Where they overlap, that's common ground. It can be found in Congress.
Congressman Schrader.
Well, and I think it can be found in dealing with our recovery, economic recovery, slow as it is, and the debt deficit issues that face our kids and our grandkids. We worry a lot of lip service is paid to dealing with the middle class, right? That's the buzzword, jobs, middle class. Well, I get concerned we're talking about just us. What about our kids? What about the middle class of the future? What about our grandkids? What middle class life are they going to have unless we step up and do the right things? And to me, it's I actually campaigned. It can be done. I actually campaigned on a suicide mission to reform Medicare and do tax reform. I went every town hall, every Rotary, every chamber meeting, senior meetings. I would talk about those two things and those two things only. Guaranteed political suicide. I'm still here. We can do this.
Yeah, in answer to that question about, what's it going to take to get Washington to deal with this fiscal challenge facing this country, I was at a meeting in September, I believe, of 2011 at the home of Senator Mark Warner, a Democrat, brought a bipartisan group of members and some business leaders, and Alan Greenspan was there. And he said something that really struck me very hard. And he said, when are you guys in Congress going to do something big on this fiscal challenge? Are you going to do it before or after the bond market crashes? And it will crash. Now, he's not known for hyperbole. And it just struck me that the former chair of the Federal Reserve is saying you're facing an impending crisis, and you're going to need to deal with it. The question is, you're going to deal with it before it hits or after. So the answer to that question is, that's part of the reason why I'm involved with this group, is because I want to deal with the problem before it becomes a crisis. And we need to make sure that we build the relationships and build the trust necessary to find those solutions now. It's going to be too late when there is a crash, and I'm afraid that these problems will become too big for us to manage. And I don't ever want to get to that point.
You know what? Your being here is really fabulous. I mean, the energy that we're going to need is going to come from young people who are really the ones most imperiled if we don't get our fiscal house in order and if we don't get our institutions in order. Members of Congress would feel better at the end of the day if we actually had something to show for our work. And we have a job on the inside, you have a job on the outside. On the outside, we're hearing Republican and Democratic members, not about the issues. People are asking us the question, why don't you guys get together and get something done? And you know what? You have a right to convey a sense of urgency to all of us in Congress that is your expectation. It's our job to come up with some solutions. Our job on the inside is to break the stranglehold that these failed practices have on our ability to even work together. The first question was about facts. Congress is a fact-free zone. It literally is. And in everything that we do doesn't allow us to have a sit-down conversation where you actually work through the facts and come out maybe with a different point of view, but in the same zone. We don't have common committee staff, so everything is adversarial. The staffs that we have oftentimes reflect the attitude of the member, and if it's a talking point member, then the staff does the same thing. When we meet in committees, there's very little effort to create a common agenda and work together on what witnesses are going to come in. It's much more about trying to get the witnesses who will be hot-button items for the press. So everything that we're doing is getting in the way of us cooperating to solve these problems. And on the fiscal issue, a lot of us think that the idea of going big is the only way to go because there is going to be some difficulty for all of us. So Republicans who have to put revenues on the table, Democrats have to put some reforms and entitlements on the table. The only way we're going to go back to our constituents and be able to sell it to them is that we can say, top line, this is really good for the country. And everyone's willing to do their part if they see that there's something in it for the common good.
You know, I just wanted to go back to what is the incentive for members of Congress to work on our fiscal house? And that, to me, is at the crux of these dramas that we have consistently back in Congress. There is a feeling that the only way, you know, Democrats will come to the table and make some significant reforms is if we're held hostage by either raising the debt limit, you know, the sequestration. I think there's a sense that unless we, you know, tie the woman to the track while the train is coming down, no one is going to act to save the hostage. And so there's a huge mistrust back there. There's a feeling that, you know, we all don't want to do something that's constructive. The only way we're forced to act is with these man-made crises and dramas that happen. That's the problem. There has to be a basic understanding and agreement that we are all there. We are all there to work on these big issues, but so far there has not been an opportunity outside of these major dramas and cliffs and taking us to the edge, shutting down the government, you know, not paying our billing. And that's just no way to govern the country. And I'm hopeful that No Labels will give us a way to govern the country where we start out at least believing and trusting that the other members across the aisle have come to Congress for the same reason we have.
This is a big topic.